Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, my dear friends. Allah bless you all. I pray you're all well. Okay, let's continue. Al-Fatiha. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد صلاة تفرحه وتسعده وترضيه واجزه بها عنا ما هو أهله يا أرحم الراحمين وآله وسلم. اللهم اللهم زدنا ولا تنقصنا وأكرمنا ولا تهنا وأعطنا ولا تحرمنا وآثرنا ولا تؤثر علينا وأرضنا وارض عنا يا كريم. So, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, we've been looking at these verses of Surah al-Anfal, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it clear so far, very clear, that وَمَن نَصْرُ إِلَّا مِنْ عِنْدِ اللَّهِ. Victory only comes from Allah. And it's only the help of Allah that allows people to win battles. And when Allah's on the side of someone, no one can oppose them. Even if all the outward means are absent, right? Even if they're outnumbered, outmatched, doesn't matter. Allah is in charge, right? And that's the basic premise and understanding of every interaction. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala controls the narrative, right? Subhanahu wa ta'ala. People may think, well, you know what? No, so-and-so's doing well, or so-and-so's got the upper hand, they've got this advantage and that advantage. Ultimately, none of it matters, because Allah can render all of their advantages into disadvantages, right? So this is something the believer understands. So who doesn't understand it? The munafiq, or someone who's a believer but with a disease, a problem in their heart, in their faith, not understanding the reality of matters, which is now addressed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when He says, وَإِذْ يَقُولُ الْمُنَافِقُونَ وَالَّذِينَ فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ مَرَضٌ غَرَّ هَؤُلَاءِ دِينُهُمْ. And so then Allah responds, so remember when the hypocrites and those with sickness in their hearts said, these believers are deluded by their faith. But then Allah comments with the final word, وَمَنْ يَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ عَزِيزٌ حَكِيمٌ. So He says to the Messenger, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, or anyone who can, any believer, or anyone who can understand and comprehend this point, He says, وَإِذْ يَقُولُ الْمُنَافِقُونَ وَالَّذِينَ فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ مَرَضٌ. When repeatedly the munafiqun and those with sickness in their hearts were saying to each other. Some of the ulama said that the munafiqun are the people with illness in their hearts, or the munafiqun, and then another group of disbelievers. But the strongest one is the munafiqun and some believers, but who haven't fully allowed themselves to embrace the religion, either because of there's some illness, some sickness in their hearts. A sickness is like what? One common sickness and illness is hasad, right? Someone seeing a blessing that Allah has given to another, and then them not feeling good about it, right? Inwardly they don't like it, so they want that person to lose it. And then look, it's fine to someone has something and you want it, right? And then the solution is, oh Allah, give me that. You make a dua, and you can work towards gaining it or getting it, but don't try to don't wish for the other person to lose it. Allah's decided that person gets that blessing. So who is a human being to say, well, no, it should have been me, I should have been the one who should have got this? There's the problem. So that's what we know what happened with the Jews of Medina, that they wanted the prophethood and the final message to come to one of their people, not to the Arabs. So hasada min indi anfusihim, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala clarifies in Surah Al-Baqarah. So there are various diseases. So one of the diseases is this disease of not fully, they're having, entertaining doubts. So now you can get a doubt clarified and it's gone, but them entertaining it and not being fully committed. So they were opposing in this way the believers. How? Through commenting to each other, and they were saying, reducing the support and reducing the general morale of people, and the general criticisms. They were saying to each other, غَرَّ هَؤُلَاءِ دِينُهُمْ, right? Their religion has duped them. As for the munafiqun, we looked at the word munafiqun in the past, and so here it refers to, so the root word is talking about a gecko, this animal like a big mouse, and it digs 2 holes in the entrance to its lair. So if a predator comes from one, it's got an escape route. The munafiq is the same. He has disbelief internally. You ask him, are you a believer? So someone's come and he's not stuck there like the kafir is. The kafir would have to say no. So he can say, yes, I am. He gets out the other way. The root word also indicates something hollow, right? And nafaq is the word they use for a subway. So it's something that's been hollowed out. They may have the form of a believer, but internally there's nothing there. It's hollow. So these people who are hollow of faith are saying to each other and saying to those of weak iman, they've been deluded, they're duped. غَرَّ هَؤُلَاءِ دِينُهُمْ. Their religion has duped them, right? Gharra from ghurur is when someone is so you have the word in the Quran, you'll find the word gharur as well with a fatha. Was it Surah Al-Fatir, I believe? And that gharur, the deceiver, that's the title of Iblis. But ghurur is this idea, this concept of being duped, being either thinking what is factually incorrect to be correct and then going ahead of that, or someone just being deluded, someone talking themselves into, so when people fall, they'll make up a lie and then they'll fall for their own narrative, right? So they were accusing the believers of this, that their religion has just duped them, deceived them. They think that they can actually fight Quraysh. They think they can actually defeat these people. They think they can go and defeat an army of this size. Look who they're picking a fight with. That's the kind of talk that was going on. And this generally causes people to lose confidence, right? Yeah. In the believers. So it affects everyone eventually. So what happened is, this is what they were saying, and Allah proved to them, and then the comment comes. Allah proved to them that they were wrong. That victory is Allah's, not anyone else's. Allah is the one who gives victory, not your means. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَنْ يَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ عَزِيزٌ حَكِيمٌ. This is a beautiful verse, right? So they were saying secretly, they can't win, what are they going to do? They're just going to be harmed. But in reality, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can do anything. He's Aziz, supremely mighty, right? From Ardun Azaz, the root word is ground that's really hard. You can't dig into it, you can't plant anything. And Hakim, right? So from Ahkam to Dabba, it means the one who perfects everything. And this is connected to wisdom. Someone who's wise knows how to do something in the best way, and the way that's most suited for every situation. But he also perfects the matter. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala perfects all of his decisions, all of his rulings, everything. His book is perfect. And so you can also say, you can also use it, understand it in a way that something is well built, well constructed. So it's not flimsy, everything's tight, packed together, and just built in a way that works well. That's part of the meaning of Hakim. So everything's perfected. Allah is supremely wise. So he says, whoever puts his trust in Allah. This tawakkul, the root word is wakala, when you choose someone to do something for you. So the believers say, oh Allah, you take care of it. All the means have to be there. That's the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that the means are taken care of, and you do your best to provide the means. But once they're done, you leave it. The matter is in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then that's where a person's faith is tested, because a person might think, a believer might think, oh well, look, it's such a difficult situation, how can this happen? And we're told, take the means as if everything depends on the means. And then once that's done, trust in Allah. Leave the means, well, apply the means, but leave your trust in the means and put your trust fully in Allah. So he says, whoever trusts in Allah, then there's an implied statement, Allah can give them victory. Why? Inna Allah azizun. فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ, so the fa indicates that there's an implied statement that Allah certainly can give them victory. فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ عَزِيزٌ, supremely, vastly mighty, Hakim, supremely wise, supremely perfect, and He perfects every single thing. And that's the reality of it. That's the reality of it. So then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, now commenting further, okay, about the verse is, let's read it. وَلَوْ تَرَى إِذْ يَتَوَفَّى الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا, okay, there's two ways of reading it. وَلَوْ تَرَى إِذْ يَتَوَفَّى الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا الْمَلَائِكَةُ يَضْرِبُونَ وُجُوهَهُمْ وَأَدْبَارَهُمْ وَذُوقُوا عَذَابَ الْحَرِيقِ. If only you could see when the angels take the souls of the disbelievers, beating their faces and backs, saying, taste the torment of burning. So there's two ways of reading this, as Sayyid Tantawi mentions. The stronger way is the way it's been translated, and the other way is, if only you could see when Allah takes back, reclaims the souls of the disbelievers, what then? The angels are beating them. So that's one way, but it's not the stronger meaning. The stronger meaning is clearly Allah has appointed the angels. Everything is done by Allah, but He honors His servants. And so He's appointed the angels with these jobs. So they take the souls of the disbelievers whilst they're beating their faces and backs. Okay, so He says, if only you could see. So this is like there's an implied statement. We're waiting for something. It's like if I said to you, if you come to my house, and then I go quiet, right? You're expecting, if you come to my house, I'll give you some tea. So if only you could see, and then, although that may be sufficient in English, and there is something implied, and your brain fills in the rest. We're saying, if only you could see this scenario, you'd see something that would make your hair stand on the ends. It's just going to be so frightening. And so this is something like what you can imply. وَلَوْ تَرَى, if only you could see. So speaking to anyone, إِذْ يَتَوَفَّى الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا, when يَتَوَفَّى, so the root word tawaffi, to take back what's yours fully, right? So then that's what the root word means, and metaphorically it's used for death. When Allah reclaims the souls that He's created and given to us, He reclaims them. So although He's the doer in everything, and as I said before, for brevity and just the way human language works, Allah, it's the angels doing it. Allah's appointed them, but the actions, as per the belief of the Muslims, Allah is the one who does everything. He says, but if only you could see when the angels are reclaiming the souls of the disbelievers. So it's referring to any disbelievers, those who oppose the prophets alayhi wassalatu wassalam, and those who harm the believers. This is their punishment right at death. But who comes to mind first? So therefore, who's alluded to first? It's those people, the idolaters, who fought the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the believers at Badr. So those 70 who were killed is referring to them primarily, but the wording is general. If only when you see those disbelievers, right, when the angels are taking them. So why? I mean, in the Arabic structure, it would have been, it could have been said, إِذْ يَتَوَفَّى الْمَلَائِكَةُ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا, but it's إِذْ يَتَوَفَّى الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا الْمَلَائِكَةُ, and the disbelievers are mentioned first to show this is why this is happening to them. الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا, those who are known, famous for their kufr. They disbelieved in God after knowing the truth that came from God, and they rejected it. And they used it as a means of opposing Allah and His Messenger. So this is what they get, and this is the punishment that's that deserve. So he says, so when the angels are doing this, taking their souls, what's happening? What's scary? What's this frightening thing? يَضْرِبُونَ وُجُوهَهُمْ وَأَدْبَارَهُمْ. They're beating, they're striking their faces and their backs. And some of the ulama have said that, like Abu Su'ud, that the word adbar, plural of dubur, it can refer to their bottom, and it's not an inappropriate word. This word, right? The word dubur, it can literally mean back, and but through it you can imply the word bottom. The Quran uses language in a very respectful and, you know, it's noble, right? There's not a single word in the Quran that's considered to be coarse or vulgar or anything like this. Hasha, right? It's very beautiful. So, but if that is the intention, that particular spot on the body, then it's a place where many the many nerves are focused there, right? So being hit on that part of the body, on one's backside, it hurts a lot, right? So that would be an increase in the punishment they're getting, and it's also humiliating, right? If for someone to be hit there, or it could mean the entire back. So why their faces and their backs? Because they turn their faces away from the prophets and from revelation, and they turn their backs on them. So that's why they were getting this. This is the start of the punishment that was promised to them. and so the angels say, the angels are verbally also chastising them and criticizing them for their actions. So there's an implied statement, and taste, or you can say, and they are saying, taste the punishment or the adhab al-hariq, one of the names of the hellfire. This hariq, this intensely huge burning pit, all the the incredibly hot flames that are there, they just burn everything to a crisp. So meaning that this punishment that's going to come, go and taste it. You're going to be tasting it. And also taste, i.e., or maybe they're exposed to some of that punishment at that moment, and so he's saying taste it, because the full amount is coming later. It's just like the hors d'oeuvres, and then the rest of the meal comes later. So that's what they get. They're opposing Allah, and Allah has this waiting for them upon death. And if someone wants to believe it, doesn't want to believe it, that's up to them, right? But this is the reality of the matter. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, ذَلِكَ, that scary, difficult situation, بِمَا قَدَّمَتْ أَيْدِيكُمْ وَأَنَّ اللَّهَ لَيْسَ بِظَلَّامٍ لِلْعَبِيدِ. Now we can understand this as Allah commenting, or we can understand this as the continuation of the words of the angels. So this, although you could say this in English, I like to stick with the Arabic that, because it points to something far or something high or something huge, well, maybe not huge, but something high in Arabic, and which indicates the severity of the situation. That, as opposed to this, right? That is because of what your hands have sent forth, or what your hands have done. So for their hands to have done certain things, it implies knowingly and willingly doing something. Imagine writing or constructing something with your hands. You have to know exactly what you're doing. You have to articulate. It's some movements are intricate, so you have to know exactly what you're going to do. Deliberate movements, and you're willingly doing it. You're choosing to do this. So that's what's expressed with hands. Plus, most of the actions of a human being are done by their hands, right? Most of them. So that's why it's referred to, the reference to the hands is there, but it's also, it's an indication that you chose this and you sent it ahead. So it implies that everything we do, is recorded, and it's as though the same action that's done is sent ahead, either to be rewarded or punished, right? In the akhirah. So this is, everyone's doing this. Any action you do, it goes to the akhirah. So to be rewarded or punished. So he's saying this is what your own hands chose. بِمَا قَدَّمَتْ أَيْدِيكُمْ. Your own hands chose this. You did this. You knowingly and willingly did this. And then this next bit is very significant. وَأَنَّ اللَّهَ لَيْسَ بِظَلَّامٍ لِلْعَبِيدِ. And that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is never unjust to His creation. Let's look at this word. So firstly, Allah, the Supreme King, that Allah, the Supreme Master of everyone, is not someone who wrongs His servants, right? Lil-abid, His servants, His slaves, as we all are. He's the master and we're the slaves. He creates us, gives us our blessings, and He's the master. But this word Dhallam, very interesting. Dhallam is a pattern of fa'al, someone who does something over and over and over and over and over again. So in some forms it's used as to express a profession, but here it's for mubalagha, extreme hyperbole, right? That so Allah is negating this. So it is not saying Allah doesn't wrong His slaves in a minor way. He's not saying that. So what the verse is saying is you could say Zayd is not a bully in class, right? Or you could say Zayd is not a horrible bully in class. Yeah? So if you say Zayd is not a bully in class, you mean he's not a bully at all. But if you say Zayd is not a horrible bully in class, he could still be a bully, just not a really horrible one, right? So there's that nuance. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying Allah is not someone who does excessive amounts of dhulm on His servants. He doesn't do any dhulm. That much is very clear from the context and other verses. That's very clear. So why is the verse using this other form, that He's not someone that does excessive amounts of dhulm? It's because if someone was to see the punishment these people got without knowing the context, without seeing their crimes and without seeing their sins, murdering innocent people like we've seen in historical events, Pharaoh having all the babies killed, other people digging a trench, putting firewood in it and just burning people inside, horrible crimes. So if someone was to not be aware of that context and not be aware of the severity of their crimes, and they just saw the punishment, they would think, well, whoa, someone who's doing this is not just a tyrant, he's an extreme tyrant, right? So Allah is saying, look, the punishment is so severe, someone who didn't know why they were getting it, they would think this. But once we know why they're getting this, we realize, yes, that punishment is perfectly suited to these crimes. And we know this because فَاعْتَرَفُوا بِذَنْبِهِمْ, they say this themselves in the hellfire. Yeah, we deserve this. They admit their sin, they admit their crimes. So He says, so the focus on this, and Allah is not someone who excessively wrongs his slaves. It doesn't mean He wrongs them at all. It's not impossible for Him to wrong His slaves. They're His property. But so we don't understand the negation of the higher amount to allow the understanding of the lower amount. Rather, we understand that everything's negated, but someone who was to see the punishment would think, whoa, look how scary it is. What could anyone actually do to deserve this? It's so bad that the person inflicting it must be like this. But then when you see the full context of it, they say, yeah, they deserve it. They do deserve it. And Allah knows more than anyone. Allah knows better than anyone. And on the Day of Judgment, this is what's going to happen. And we've seen it in our times. In the past, I used to have to explain these sorts of verses. I did in quite a bit of detail here, but other verses about people going to hell in quite a bit of detail. And then you see that there are people who will willingly bomb, innocent men, women, children, constantly deprive them of food, water, sanitation, all of these things. Let them suffer, live in squalor until illness, hunger, fatigue, famine, disease decimates them, and just casually not even lose any sleep. That level of dhulm. And then so now even non-Muslims, they've been reading the Quran and thinking, yeah, this verse 6 months ago would have really bothered me, but now I'm comfortable with it. Right? I'm fine with this verse, because they've seen just how low a person can fall when they're distant from God. That the dhulm they can do on others is just just horrible, right? So this is very clear. Allah. So then he says, كَدَأْبِ آلِ فِرْعَوْنَ وَالَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِهِمْ. Their fate is that of the people of Pharaoh and those before them. كَفَرُوا بِآيَاتِ اللَّهِ فَأَخَذَهُمُ اللَّهُ بِذُنُوبِهِمْ. Abu Su'ud's done a brilliant job here. And so he says, anyway, they all disbelieve in Allah's signs, so Allah sees them for their sins. And indeed, Allah is all-powerful, severe in punishment. So, let's just look at the word da'ab. Da'ab means a habit, or something that's constantly done. Al-amal al-da'ub, a work that's repeated over and over. So the habit of the followers of Fir'aun, he's included in this, it's implied that he's included in this. وَالَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِهِمْ, and those who were just before them. They may have been thousands of years before them. Allah expresses it that they were just before to show that it's a sunnah. It's a law that's applied. It's a recurring theme. They do this type of dhulm, they get this type of punishment. And sometimes when a long time passes, people think, well, it hasn't happened in so long. Is it ever likely to happen again? Can it even happen again? So it says those who were just before them. These people, the people of Fir'aun and the people of Ad and Thamud and then the people of Nuh alayhi salatu wasalam. So these alayhi salatu wasalam. So he shows that they're just before to show that, look, it's a recurring thing and it's not something that just can't happen again or won't happen again because a lot of time has passed. No, this is what's happened. So this is what he says about them. And Abu Su'ud says there's a couple of ways of understanding it. But he says when the punishment came to them because of their kufr, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala now compares their scenario to the scenario of other criminals who have gone in the past, who have been destroyed and decimated in the past because of their crimes. This is to show that these people, the disbelievers who oppose the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, are just like those people in their crimes, in the wrong that they did. So it shows these people, Quraysh in a much worse light than we would have previously understood. And it also shows that it's a sunnah muttarida. It's a sunnah that applies all the time. You do dhulm, you're going to get a whack. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't يا عبادي إني حرمت الظلم على نفسي وجعلته بينكم محرما فلا تظالموا. A hadith Qudsi narrated in Sahih Muslim, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we're told Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, my servants, I've made tyranny forbidden for myself, and I've made it forbidden amongst you. So don't wrong each other. But people just don't seem to care. They just, they think like there's no day of judgment, that, or things are not settled in this life. So let's just go wrong people left, right and center. Well, absolutely not. Allah may allow people to get away with things temporarily. Sometimes it's to allow them to make tawbah. Sometimes it's to allow them to just, pile up a bigger case of charges against them. When He takes them, when He seizes them, that's it. They've had it. It's a horrible situation to be in, right? So this is it. So that's one way of understanding it. And you can also say that their habit is the habit of those who were before them. So therefore, what was done to the people before them was done to them. Yeah, that's one way of understanding it. That the idolaters of Quraysh, they resemble the followers of Fir'aun and all the other disbelievers who destroyed in the past in their actions. So what was done to them in the past is going to be done to this lot presently. And they were defeated, and the punishment they got. So that's one of that's a good solid understanding of it. وَالَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِهِمْ, and those just before, and just explain that. Why, you ask, why are they going to be punished? كَفَرُوا بِآيَاتِ اللَّهِ. They disbelieved, they covered up the truth of the signs, the miracles of Allah, the Supreme King. He deserves to be obeyed, He deserves to be worshipped. The truth He sends down cannot be rejected. كَفَرُوا بِآيَاتِ اللَّهِ فَأَخَذَهُمُ اللَّهُ بِذُنُوبِهِمْ. Just look at the kha in this. فَأَخَذَ, Allah took them, seized them. Who? Allah, the Supreme King. Once again the names repeated for stronger effect. بِذُنُوبِهِمْ. And Abu Sa'ud says that Allah seized them and gripped them because of their sins. It indicates that yes, their disbelief was sufficient for their punishment, but along with that disbelief they had other sins, other crimes that they were doing. So for the whole group of crimes, the disbelief and the other things, they were taken and seized and punished and destroyed. And why would this happen? Inna Allah qawiyyun. Allah is extremely strong, powerful, right? Shadidul iqab, and intense and gripping in punishment. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala punishes someone, it's severe, especially for actions like disbelief. And for actions like dhulm, you don't want to be anywhere near this punishment. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is powerful. He can do this. He can punish in ways we can't even imagine. And no one gets away with it. No one gets away with it. They were doing this throughout the Meccan stage, making life hard for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, for the other believers, torturing people, killing people, like Sumayya, the wife of Ammar, the wife of Yasir, the mother of Ammar ibn Yasir, the first martyr in Islam. Abu Jahl, stabbed her with a spear. He had it tied down, and he stabbed her and killed her, right? And they were doing this for years. So when it comes back, it's intense. A'udhu billah. Allah protect us, and protect us in this life, protect us in the next life, protect us from ever veering from the way He wants us to be, from the way of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And may Allah protect us from ever doing dhulm on anyone. Ameen ya Rabbal Alameen. We'll stop here. وصلى الله على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم والحمد لله رب العالمين. Allah bless you all. Assalamu alaikum.